Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers is a weekly program designed to answer all your questions, including the ones you didn't even know you had, and to clarify the endless debates around the wonderful and fascinating world of sexuality. Join us for real talk about sex from two experts in the field. Richard and Larry Siegel have over 50 years of experience as sex therapists, educators, counselors, and researchers. The Siegel brothers are recognized around the world as trainers of medical and mental health professionals.
Hello and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. I'm Dr. Ricky Siegel, a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And my super awesome big brother.
Still my favorite role.
So cheers to you, my brother.
Cheers.
Our ritual sake toast, and cheers to you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to Sex Talk. A delicious blended sake.
Very citrusy.
Yuzu juice.
Yes.
Very nice.
I like that.
High on the list of wonderful things the Japanese have given the world. So, welcome back to Sex Talk.
Indeed. And thank you for joining us again. Welcome for those of you who have been following us all along. And again, we'd like to ask you to continue to do that. Follow us on Facebook, hit those likes and shares as often as you can. Mm-hmm. And please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Help that grow as well.
And we'd love to hear your comments and discussion and questions and ideas for future shows, etc.
Indeed. So let us hear from you, no matter what.
So, as we're fond of saying, every day should be Sex Talk Day, but Friday night is our time. Mm-hmm. And it's a good thing we had the whole month, because we had other things to talk about last week. But what started as National Masturbation Day on May 7th has grown into National Masturbation Month.
That's right.
So we have all of May, and we thought we'd take tonight out to talk about this holiday, this commemoration. Yeah. I remember hearing years ago when it first started, this was back in the 90s, right?
I think it was like 96, something
and
like that.
There was an attempt, one of those years, to try and get everybody in the world to orgasm at the same time. I think it was like 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, and like
I vaguely remember
that experiment. If everybody just jumped up and down at the same time, would it? Mm-hmm. Right? If everybody on the planet jumped. If everybody on the planet came in unison, what kind of cosmic sexual energy would be released? I don't know if it was ever pulled off. No pun
intended, I hope.
But it is. We talk about it often. It's just one of those ironies of our inherent discomfort with all things sexual, that the most universal, common form of sexual expression, probably 99% of most people's first sexual awakening, is something that we can't talk about. It's shrouded in guilt and shame and all kinds of myths,
absolutely,
and negative views. This came up recently, right? This idea that masturbation is for lonely losers that can't get laid, and if somebody has a partner, they don't need that anymore. Right?
Yeah, so that whole aspect, and we definitely will get into some of those myths and misconceptions. But I want to go back for a minute.
Colorful history.
I want to go back for a minute, because you said something, I think, that may be more important than you even realized. When you talk about that thing that really is for so many people, and I would say the vast majority of people, their very first sexual experience was masturbation. The very first experience they ever had with sexual stimulation was with their own hands, accidentally or on purpose. So if that's the first way that most people do experience sexual stimulation, especially for men.
It's probably safe to say for certain generations of women, they might not have had any sexual experience or orgasm until after they were married, especially if, back in the day when they were married at 16, 17.
Right.
But for guys, I bet 99% of guys in the world had their first orgasm alone.
Okay.
Right.
Be that as it may, that first sexual experience that gets so filled with shame.
Right.
And it's like negative from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what sets the sexual template for a lot of people, maybe especially men. Maybe that's also why there seems to be more taboo against masturbation for women.
Yeah.
Right? Although there is a lot of taboo against masturbation for guys. We have often just been stunned. Right? It's not easy to kind of throw me off when it comes to things that people say or think sexually. But I've never been able to wrap my head around when we've heard from guys, when you ask some guys, do you masturbate? And their response is, hey, no, I'm not gay.
Yeah,
right?
That's bizarre.
I can never wrap my head around that.
These super homophobic guys that think touching even their own penis is gay.
Yeah.
Right? These guys must urinate like this and
Really?
have a mess on their toilets, right?
Yeah.
What guy doesn't hold
A
themselves?
little Shakespeare comes to mind.
To aim.
Right? I think she doth protest too much. Right? But again, there's no shortage of bizarre ideas that people have around masturbation. It is the source of so much shame. All of what we talk about with porn.
It goes back
Absolutely.
centuries.
Absolutely. And it's been a negative script for centuries.
Right, and misinterpretation, right?
Yes.
Like the classic of all, especially for religious folks and biblical scholars, is that a term for masturbation for centuries was onanism, after the story of Onan in the Old Testament, which people think he was killed for the sin of spilling the seed, which people think is colloquial for masturbating. And read the story, right?
Yeah.
Read your Bible. He wasn't killed for masturbating. He was killed for not impregnating his dead brother's wife, which was his legal and moral obligation since his brother died before bearing a child. And Onan had this legal obligation to
Under
serve
Jewish
as
law.
surrogate and bear a child in his dead brother's name. And apparently he was okay with banging his sister-in-law,
He didn't want a kid.
but pulled out.
Right.
And that was the crime. That was the sin of Onan. And of course, there were no such thing as microscopes or genetics or understanding of sperm and eggs and 23 chromosomes and all of that. So there was this sense that it was like killing baby seeds. Spilling on the ground instead of on the womb, on the soil where the seed is supposed to be planted. It's spent on the ground.
And that is, I think, the root. The issue that people do obsess over is the spilling of the seed. What they thought, what they believed was that we, the men, carry the seed. And it even says, like the acorn of the tree, the whole seed, the whole being is contained in that. So we, during intercourse, simply transfer that seed into the woman's body, and a woman is just an incubator.
Right.
So the sodomy prohibition, and again, for those of you who like to read that stuff, has nothing to do with homosexuality, is really about
butt sex.
It's almost like an equivalent of abortion.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you are not depositing that seed in a woman's body, you are basically
killing it.
You're just sort of throwing babies all around. Right?
Yeah.
Those are babies in your sock. Those are babies in your tissues. Those are babies on the floor. I mean, that's what they were thinking. That's what they believed.
The gym sock.
Right? Now, again, I'd like to think that since we know more today, we can change some of those misbeliefs.
Physicians would go into schools and scare the crap out of boys and tell them all of these stories. And Graham developed the graham cracker and Kellogg the cornflakes as part of a taming diet that would quell the fiery passions that would stimulate boys to want to masturbate.
Right. No wonder why in Boy Scouts made popular the chocolate with the graham cracker and the marshmallows. It's supposed to be libido dampening, prevent that, like you said, that hot fire in your loins.
Yes, because when you're running around the woods with a bunch of other boys in khakis, you got to be careful not to get aroused.
One of the things I'm really excited about having our favorite returning champion back with us tonight, the wonderful, inimitable Dr. Laurie Shapiro, to talk about some of these things that it's really something that we should just only look at positively. Right? How can our own bodies be a threat? Right? How can it be wrong for our bodies to be able to generate so much pleasure?
I just remembered another important part of the history of how this whole National Masturbation Day originated. It was during the Clinton administration, when, remember, Clinton
Joycelyn Elders
fired maybe perhaps the best and precedent-setting, the first woman, African-American, to be appointed Surgeon General.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Clinton's first term, right? Remember, his second term was known for the whole little Monica Lewinsky affair.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps had he listened to his Surgeon General in his first term instead of firing her, things would have turned out different.
Now,
in his
why did
second
he
term.
fire her?
He fired her because she, in an answer to a question from the press, gave pretty much the same advice that Ann Landers did back in the 80s, that kids should be taught as part of a comprehensive sexuality education about masturbation, particularly as an alternative to intercourse.
Right.
And for that, he caved to pressure from the right and fired her.
Right. And in response to that, National Masturbation Day was born.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess people decided after a full day of masturbation, hey, we want more of that. Give me a whole month.
Right.
And now we have May. Right? So, again, I think from this point, because we can rant for days
let's
on
get
this.
to our
So
friend.
let's get to Laurie.
And as promised, we are back with our favorite guest, the brilliant Laurie Shapiro.
Indeed.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Social worker and sex therapist extraordinaire from
The DMV.
the DMV. That's right. The DC, Maryland, Virginia triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your office, am I having a brain cramp on? You're in Rockport? No. You're in, help me
I'm
out.
in Maryland. I'm in
Maryland.
Rockville. I live in Rockville, Maryland, but my offices are in Bethesda, DC, and McLean, Virginia.
Oh, 3 offices now.
3 offices. I'm trying to open a Rockville office as well. I want to take over the suburban Rockville.
Good.
Somebody needs to.
Yeah.
Right. Who better than me?
More sex positivity in the suburbs.
Yes,
So,
well, and
first,
since my oldest daughter went to since my oldest daughter went to college, I'm also educating all of her college friends in Alabama. We do weekly sex chats in the dorm. It's great.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah. And another place that desperately needs sex ed. Happy National Masturbation Now month. Went from a day to a month.
My favorite month of the year. What could be better than masturbation?
Right.
Masturbation is not just an individual game. It's something you could play with your partner. That's any location. The best thing about masturbation these days, in the olden days, the most you could do is, phone sex, which always felt for people a little goofy, a little silly. They had the videos on MTV of the woman doing the phone sex. I think it was like Aerosmith while she was ironing.
That's right.
Holding the baby, smoking a cigarette.
Right, exactly.
That's right.
But these days, you can do everything on video. It's great for, military, people who travel for a living. It can really keep you sexually connected with your partner. So it's not just something you do like rubbing your nose when you've got an itch. This can be an entire event. And that's what I talk to my clients about with respect to masturbation. either individually or with your partner. It should be an event. It's not something you rush to do just to get it out of the way. Self-pleasure. And of course, Ricky and Larry, we've talked many times about the word masturbation and the derivation of masturbation and how it actually means to disturb, which isn't at all what we're all
kind of the opposite of why
utilizing.
I'm defiling myself.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. Self-pleasure. And knowing that the largest majority of women do not orgasm during penis, vagina, during intercourse, the idea of opening up the idea of masturbation and the pleasures related to masturbation leaves women more satisfied sexually. Women in the beginning, they're all hot about sex and yada, yada, yada. And we've talked about, then you have a baby and then, you're tired. And so if you're having sex, that's just penis and vagina with no orgasm for the woman ever at all, she's not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that mutual masturbation is fabulous for people, in relationships when they're tired. And I've talked about that. I have several couples right now who are COVID pregnant, and they're talking about, we're going to have this time and then the new baby and there's not going to be any sex in the 6 weeks. And I was like, during those 6 weeks, you can have a ton of intimacy. You could have plenty of skin to skin contact. There can be mutual masturbation. You could masturbate each other. If you're not ready for him to touch your vagina because you're nervous about it, your clitoris has nothing to do with where that baby came from. So there's the opportunity to have sexual pleasure at any time. So I think that's tremendously important for everyone to know.
Absolutely. And, even when you're talking about just by yourself, I forgot who it was, maybe even Woody Allen of all people. But basically, it's one of those, you're guaranteed to be having sex with somebody you love.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, too often that's not the case when there's so much guilt and shame wrapped up.
Well, that comes after.
Masturbation.
That comes after. And I think that's one of those results. And I think where some of that comes, and I want to definitely hear your take on this, Laurie, too, because when we talk about so many of the myths related to masturbation, one of the primary ones is around the fact that masturbation is sort of a second-rate substitute for intercourse.
Right.
And that if you're having partnered sex,
you don't need
to. Exactly. Yet we find that it's actually the opposite of that the more partnered sex people are having, especially satisfying partnered sex, the more they do tend to masturbate. So where's that headspace? I
think that what I've heard a lot from women is that if he's masturbating, then I'm not doing my job. And I say, but sometimes masturbation is not about partnered sex. Sometimes it's just about the desire for something that feels good and self-soothing and stimulating. I've actually had clients telling me that I know when he's been masturbating because when he ejaculates, it's less. And I'm like, why are you measuring his ejaculate? Or during COVID, I have had so many people arguing and fighting. They're like, I'm downstairs working, he's upstairs working. And then I find out he had a break and he was watching porn and jerking off. And I'm like, so? And it's like, well, why wouldn't he come downstairs? I'm there. It's like, well, how does he know you want to have sex? Maybe he just wants to have sex by himself. Or women who feel like they have to hide the fact that they masturbate at all. They're like, well, I can't let my husband know I masturbate because then he'll be upset because I don't orgasm with him. And I'm like, why wouldn't you bring him into that and let him be part of that pleasure? Right. Or talk about it during intercourse about how, earlier today I was masturbating and I was touching myself. There's a lot of eroticism that comes around masturbation.
Well, let me ask you this to follow that up, because I know we all of us sex therapists see this a lot. And for me, you know this from all our years of supervision, it's on my list of bullshit things they teach us in graduate school, right? Like meeting the patient where the patient is at. Well, no, not if the patient's in a fucked up place. I'm not going to meet them there. So how have you dealt with, it's also not helpful for us to tell our patients that their values and beliefs are bullshit and they should just throw them out. But how do you deal with this this common value that people often feel that if you're in a relationship with me, any and all sexual energy must be directed to me, or it's a betrayal, it's cheating.
Mm-hmm.
So people who see masturbation as, oh, that's what you really prefer, I can't compete with that, so you're cheating on me.
Right. Well, I start with a very intensive psychosexual with each person as an individual. I want to understand, their childhood beliefs, what their parents taught them. Had they been caught masturbating? What did they hear about masturbation? Is there a religiosity component? So I really want to get into what their morals and values and ideals are. And I don't challenge them in a way telling them that they're right or wrong. I go through supposition. Let's do a little if then. Let's talk about how do we open that up? How do we bridge the idea that you really are the center of that attention? What if when he's masturbating, what he's masturbating to is you and thinking about you, which many men tell me is the case. I was masturbating thinking about my wife giving me oral sex, or I was masturbating remembering the first time we had sex. So really trying to get them to understand what is at the root of it and understanding how is that cheating? Because I think the cheating component comes in more when when there's pornography involved. I think I hear that much more. So if you're watching pornography and cheating, you're thinking about another woman. Well, what if you're not watching pornography? What if the highlight reel is about me? What if I'm the center? What if I'm the star of that show? Is that still cheating? Is that still not okay? And so kind of gently, picking some fruit off the tree without really being too much in your face and giving them the opportunity and the idea of what else could there be? What else could that bring? And I also love to do having people flip flop. Like I have men read Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are, and I'll have the women read Barry McCarthy's Contemporary Sexuality, and then I have them switch. So then you understand the differences of what people are dealing with. I use so much psychoeducation because we all know it's like telling somebody there's no God if they really believe in God. They're never going to buy into that.
Right.
But what if we buy into the fact, okay, maybe there is a God, but it's not a white man in the desert with blonde hair, blue eyes, walking around in a pair of Birkenstocks. Like, let's talk about what else God could be, I had one client who used to say to me, I don't believe in giraffes. Like that was his joke. I don't believe in giraffes. And I was like, well, okay, what if there was a zebra? And so trying to find other ways to kind of get people to open up to the idea that then there's more than just what we learn as children. And so much of our sexual identity and our understanding about our own sexuality is rooted in that. So many men tell me, and they're embarrassed to tell me, their initial sexual masturbation was humping things, humping pillows, humping the bed, humping this. And they think somehow that's horrible. I had one guy say to me, I screwed the pillow as a child. And I'm like, the pillow didn't seem to mind. And it's about, kind of moving to like normalizing. Mm-hmm. Same thing with women. I've had women who have very specific ways that they've masturbated on their stomach with, something, a pillow, something, and teaching them how to maybe flipping over onto your back with it, or, adding something in, with your partner and doing it slowly, to slowly get yourself to try new things.
I don't want to imply that there's anything wrong with any way, that there's a right way or a wrong way, whatever does it, does it. But I will say for some of those people who learn how to get off by grinding, a lot of it comes from the belief that they're not allowed to touch themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And the spilling of the seed stuff and, all of those misnomers about religion. If you really talk to somebody who really knows the Bible well, some of that stuff is just lost in translation. It's not even reality. So
some of it, yeah.
Some of it, right. Some of it's just not even people even understanding.
When it comes to sex and sexuality, I will say that there is, when you listen to what people say, especially around things like masturbation, the only thing people can fall back on is that fruitful and multiply thing. But really, there is nothing in any biblical text that talks about any of this stuff. It is all assumption. It is all arbitrary interpretation. Even ironically, how many times do we kind of laugh about that irony, that story about Onan, right? The quote unquote the sin of Onan. How did that end up becoming about masturbation?
Onanism was a colloquialism for
masturbation
for like centuries.
Right. So how did that happen?
This, like Lori just said, it comes from the spilling the seed thing. Even though Onan's crime had nothing to do with masturbation, it was not impregnating his dead brother's wife and bearing a child in his name.
Pulling out.
Right. Coitus interruptus.
You have to have intercourse in order to pull out. That's not masturbation.
That's what pissed God off.
Right.
Well, just for the record, pulling out is not an appropriate form of birth control. I'll just put that out there.
That's true.
It actually can be. I'm gonna continue to take issue with that. The way people do it and think about it, absolutely.
Guys suck at it for starters, right? For a lot of guys, when they think they're about to be ejaculating, they already are.
That's right.
A lot of guys just say they'll pull out and then just go, "Oops, sorry, you got me too hot."
That's the one thing. This is the one thing I think that guys can learn from porn. Yeah. Because before that money shot, right? Before that cum shot, these guys are pulling out way before. And it's a significant amount of time before they do that. Right. That's a good lesson.
I ask guys that a lot.
Yeah.
You can jerk off to that, but you can't do that with your partner. It's some kind of crime that you have to finish outside, right?
Right. But interestingly, I hear a lot from people, from couples. Women get very offended by men who cannot come during intercourse. Right. So they get offended if their partner literally has to pull out and finish themselves off. They're like, well, why can't you come inside? And I explain very specifically, like, the grip of the hand, the grip of the vagina, they're really not the same thing. It doesn't feel the same. So that's another area where masturbation, because that is a form of masturbation, where women get offended. And I'm like, dude, less mess, like pump the brakes, like open up to the idea. And the other thing is with masturbation, for women who don't orgasm during intercourse, it's about either afterwards. Sometimes the guy's spent and you're still feeling unsatisfied. What's wrong with saying, honey, can you hand me my vibrator out of the nightstand? Because I still need to orgasm. And while he's laying there kind of in that refractory period and she's, manually stimulating herself to orgasm, men will often then get an erection again and be ready to go again. So
especially, if I can throw in what I've always recommended for guys too, in that exact scenario, to basically spoon, curl up together, hold, have her in your arms while she's doing that. And you're absorbing some of that energy. And that really does kind of, reset it a little bit quicker too.
Yes. And staying away from the misnomers that, I've actually had men say to me recently, well, I'm in my 50s. And I'm like, dude, don't even go there. 50 has nothing to do with your virility. If you're concerned about your virility, go get a medical checkup. Let them check your testosterone, your prostate. Go over the whole Megillah. But don't tell me as a 50-year-old man you can't have sex twice in one night, because there are men significantly older than you who could do it 3 and 4 times. If that's not your jam, fine. But don't tell me because you're 50, once you come, you have to be like, and that's just not real.
You talk about the familiarity. You talk about the lessons that are learned. That's part of the script.
Right.
That most guys have grown up with. And, I think that the pulling out part and finishing themselves for guys and the objection that some women have for that, I think kind of goes back to what you were saying before. It's almost like that when people get together in a relationship, there's almost that sense of propriety that partners have. I own his penis. I own her vagina. I own his penis. Whatever it is, there's that sense of ownership over the other person's sexuality. And I think that's,
which is so fantastic. In I work a lot with alternate lifestyles. I mean, all the alphabets and swinging and polyamory and yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And I love about that's not part of the dynamic, that sex is not about the relationship. Sex is a great part of the relationship, but it's not the entirety of the relationship. And knowing that, sexual parts and masturbation and all those other things are not about just about who we are as a couple. It's about our sexual pleasure. And I think if people let go of the hangups around it, they're going to be a lot more satisfied. They're going to be a lot happier, and their sex life is going to be a lot better. People come to me all the time for a million different reasons, and I always go right into all the sex stuff, and they're like, well, we have communication problems. I'm like, so what's going on then in the bedroom? Because if you can't communicate outside the bedroom, there is something wrong in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Although I see a lot right now, which is interesting to me. I'm seeing a lot of men with low desire for their particular partner in long-term relationships, even though their wife still looks beautiful and still is great and in shape and all that other stuff. Just like after 20 years, they're just like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and the wives are devastated. They don't know what they're doing wrong. And it's like, we got to get out of the mindset of what your original sexual script is as a couple.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the fact that things change, it doesn't mean anything is wrong. And that's often a good opportunity, I think, to bring that self-pleasuring into the mix.
Right.
But
again, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm saying, but what a lot of the things that hold people back with that are these ideas, these myths, these misconceptions.
Right.
How many women are basically afraid to use their vibrator as often as they want because there's that fear that they'll become dependent on it.
I hear that all the time, and I'm like, no. You may get accustomed to the way that your vibrator brings you to orgasm, but that doesn't mean you won't be able to orgasm in 100 different other ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's about continuing the experimentation piece. But what really is heartbreaking for me is that so many women, their identity as a woman is based on their husband's sexual interest in them and their sex, whether or not they want to have sex. If my husband doesn't want to have sex with me, somehow there's something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And I think so much in this society is that, that women are like, I'm supposed to be a Barbie doll. I'm supposed to be a porn star. I'm supposed to do this and I'm supposed to look like that. And it just, it defeats them and delineates their own sexual power, which is what they need to reclaim. Because what is the sexiest thing ever? Confidence. Confidence is the sexiest thing ever. Even after I had my third child, and I was not a skinny girl after having, 10-pound babies. I can tell you that. I had a little work to do over the years. But even after that, I still felt confident. I mean, even when you guys met me 100 years ago, I was not where I am now. It took me a long time to get fully to where I was, but I was always saucy. And I think if we teach women how to always feel saucy, regardless of what their body looks like, that's a big sexual turn on to partners.
Because it's also what they're bringing to it, right? Because there's that sexual confidence. It's that connection they have to their body. And I think the stronger. And there's
no better way to enhance that than to have a good relationship with yourself. Right? Nobody knows better what gets you off than you. Mm-hmm. And if you could bring that into partnered sex, that'll make you a more confident lover.
Indeed.
And of course, it's about always bringing in, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. None of these things happen in a vacuum. And you have to be willing to bring them all in together so that you can feel like you want to in those spaces. Lights on, lights off. I say this, you've heard me say this a million times. You haven't really had an orgasm until you've been able to do it with your eyes open, staring dead in the face with your partner. That's when you're going to have the mind-blowing orgasm, because you're letting go of everything. Is my butt too big? Is my tummy too flabby? Am I making a weird sex face? When you let go of all of that, sex is so much more powerful. Masturbation as well. Masturbate with your eyes open. You don't have to close your eyes. You can totally be free. It's about learning how to be free and learning how to focus inward and still be connected to your body.
Well, that is about as perfect a way of wrapping up as I can imagine. So we'll end it there. And thank you.
Thank you so much for asking my opinion. You know how I love to chat with you guys and share and talk. And
same here.
None of us are short on opinions and love talking about sex.
Indeed.
Yes. I'll do it all day, every day. My kids make fun of me. They're like, people pay you for this? I'm like, yes, all day, every day. Stay in school, kids.
So, as usual, we'll have Lori Shapiro's contact information up for those of you lucky enough to be in the DMV area.
Yes.
License.
And my website is LoriShapiro.sextherapist.com. Easy peasy.
All right.
Excellent.
Thank you, our dear friend.
Thank you so much. So great to see you.
Happy touching.
Yes. Happy Masturbation Month.
That's right.
So thank you, Lori. Again,
Once
let
again,
us
yes.
toast to our returning champion. Always so great to talk with you and get your views. Cheers.
Cheers
Thank
to
you.
you.
Beautiful.
So the takeaway in all of this is, despite, I think, lifetimes worth of negative messages and just shame and disgust that some people have learned to attach to pleasuring their own bodies, let's make a point of getting over that. Let's put that one behind us.
Yeah. And at the very least, to go back to the horrendous treatment of Dr. Joycelyn Elders, what she said was that it should be taught. I want to be clear. She was not talking about a demonstration in the classroom like, okay, boys and girls, today we're going to show. She
So
said,
men, take your hands.
this is what it is. Some people do, some people don't, and nothing bad will happen to you if you do. Just if we can start right there.
Just normalize it.
Right.
You know? And despite what a lot of people like to say, by normalizing something, by presenting it as a part of life, it's not promotion. Right? And that's another one of those things that some people are too quick to grab onto. So I'm going to take issue with what I just said, and I am going to be somebody that is promoting masturbation. All right? May not shake your hand, but but basically this is something that everybody will, really should at least think about. I'm not going to say everybody has to do, although the world would be a much better place. Right? It'd be a lot fewer rockets flying around the Middle East if people were just basically spending that time masturbating. They'd feel better, they'd get along with each other better, and nobody dies. That's not a lot to ask for.
So that'll do it for this week's Sex Talk. We thank you for joining us, and tune in next Friday and every Friday for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
Thank you, and stay well.
Thanks for watching Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us each week on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of the latest developments in the ever-changing world of sex and sexuality.